Okay guys, as soon as I start seeing something on my screen, I'm going to address you. So I haven't seen myself yet. As soon as I start seeing myself on the screen, I'm going to start saying hello to you. If you can hear me already, if you've joined in, can you please let me know in the comments below, in the chat section, yeah, whether you can hear me. And I'm going to just kind of give a few seconds before we start, because sometimes, I've done this in the past whereby I was just talking to myself. The stream was on private, no one was here, no one acknowledged whether they were able to hear me or not. But I think it's now been 30 seconds, so we're gonna get cracking. So hey name tags and welcome. This is Ash from HealMyTech, and if you want to unleash your true potential, consider subscribing, enable the bell notification icon so that I can help you go from newbie to techie on this channel with the reviews, repairs and tutorials of tech. So welcome, and this is going to be part 14 of our one PC tool them all series, and I'm going to just switch over to my screen and webcam. And as you can see, and in the last poll on the community tab, you guys voted for a rationale for each PC part, okay, which was 43%. So I guess we're going to do that. And maybe there's one person watching, so type something in the chat if that's okay with you. Okay, so if you've just joined us on this series, we have done now 13 parts plus an introduction, so that's 14 parts, but today is part 14 and it's going to be called something like rationale for each PC part. So we leave the explanation of this series towards the end, but essentially this is where we're trying to triple boot Windows, Linux and Mac on a single system. It's called One PC Tool Them All Challenge. It's a show where I give you full responsibility to decide every aspect of this next PC build. So you have front seat, everyone votes at the end of a video usually, and we go with majority unless it's a huge problem. So far it's only happened once that we were not able to go with the majority. There was an exception, but we've explained this already. Okay, now what we're going to do is go through each part of this PC build, and if you have any other questions, if you do join us live right now for anything else, I would kindly appreciate if you leave them to the end, because what I'm going to do is focus really on this the parts of basically the rationale for each part of PC building. You guys know very well, I've been there, you probably are there, and you've done this before, that you can take a long time to decide each part. It can be freakingly annoying. So I'm going to share my experiences with you, maybe some wisdom, and if there's any mistakes, please let me know. So whoever's joining us, say hello and I'll say hello back. Right, let's get cracking. So the first thing, obviously, most people, I'm guessing, they're going to use PC Part Picker, and this is a great way to start. It's a great place to find out generally what parts are compatible, and whether also there's any issues with maybe dimensions, etc. I did a very quick breakdown. It's not complete, but if I were to buy this now, this PC would cost me just over $1,000, like £1,000, close to $1,000, a bit more. This, I don't think it's cost me that much, because some parts were used, which I'm reusing, and some parts are brand new. And also I got some parts from Amazon Prime Day, and so it doesn't cost me as much. And okay. Now, in this, there is an absence of the Windows license, which I have a couple of copies, which I got for very cheap. And there's also the question of you can use Windows for free legally. I've done a video on the channel. You can watch up there. I'll try to put the link. But that's not a huge problem. Also, the fact that usually I'm not going to be paying £120 or £180 for a Windows license. No way. I'd prefer using it for free, or I would prefer to use Linux. Okay, now let's go through each part. We should start with the case, really. Now, I've done a couple of videos on the case, getting ready and deciding. The case that we chose is the Fractal Design Define R5. This is the non-windowed version. Obviously, if you want to showcase a build that's got a lot of RGB lighting, LED lighting, water cooling, whatever, feel free to get a windowed case. And even this one, this is the non-windowed version, but I'm okay with this because my PC is actually underneath my desk. I don't need to see it. It is a bit cheaper than the windowed version. Plus, a windowed version will have less noise camouflage. So it's not major, but it will be a little bit more noisy. A non-windowed version, especially this Fractal Design R5, is perfect for my situation. One side note to this, I did not know, but later on we'll find out there is some RGB on the system actually, and I may get an RGB PSU from a company. So if in the future there's enough RGB to justify getting a windowed panel, I'm just gonna have to get a windowed panel replacement, but the case will remain the same. Now, in terms of size, I maintain that first-time builders should get a mid-tower standard size, which will fit a motherboard, whether it's an ITX, micro ATX, or even a standard ATX size motherboard. If size is not a problem for you, if you have no restriction on size, I do not advise to get a mini ITX case. I do not advise to get a micro ATX case, even though the micro ATX probably can be cheaper, but the mini ITX can be more expensive than the micro ATX. And the mid tower, depending on the make and model, it can be reasonable price. It can be a bit more costly than a micro ATX version, obviously. Now, what do you get apart from a bigger space? And why a bigger space, even though you may be going with a micro ATX board? The reason, number one, is you need space to work in. If you're a first-time builder, it is very difficult to work in a micro ATX if you're a first-time builder. It's not impossible, but it's a bit harder. And the other reason is, in the near future, if you get a decent case, that case will stay with you for a long time. Cases is one of those things which you actually don't need one to build a computer. You could get away with not building in anything, build in a cardboard box, build on your table, leave it out in the open space, put it on a piece of plywood, hang it on the wall. It doesn't matter. Obviously, it has its advantages and disadvantages, but the case is actually something which, if you get a decent one, it could last you a lifetime. The only feature that you may not get is a couple of modern features, like, for example, maybe front USB Type-C ports, maybe, or in more modern cases, not in my one, there will be like a cover for the PSU to hide a lot more cables, so it's better for cable management to a certain extent. But in my case, because there is a front panel, sorry, a side panel which is non-windowed, it doesn't make a difference to me. Okay, now the quality of the case, I would also say to you, now being a bit more, obviously, after 4 years of building PCs, I would not buy a cheap case ever again, because cheap cases, not very good build. You will hurt yourself. There will be no perks, for example, like thumbless or screwless screwless thumb screws, that's the one. And also the ease, I mean, for example, this Fractal Design, the modularity is brilliant, and this also allows for a lot of water cooling options. Obviously, we're not going with water cooling for this build, but I'm just saying it has a lot more options. So do consider getting a slightly better case if you may be thinking about continuing to build or upgrading your PC in the future. However, if you have no idea and you want to save some money, the case is where you could save some money. I would say get the cheapest possible, get the second hand one, get a used one, get a free one, go to the charity shop. It's fine. You will build, it will work. In terms of performance, it will make no difference. It only makes a difference in terms of the experience of building. Okay, right. So I think that's in terms of case, make and model. This video is not sponsored, by the way, but there will be Amazon affiliate links, so please use them. I have no recommendation for specific makes and model. Whatever you feel you want to go with, you know, don't spend too much time looking. You won't find it. I did spend quite a lot of time looking for this case, the Fractal Design R5, but most branded, you know, company these days, they make excellent cases, and don't spend too long. Just get one and get cracking. All right, so that's the case. Obviously, one more thing about this website for PC Part Picker, the Make sure one more reason about choosing a standard ATX or mid-tower ATX size case is for compatibility of dimensions. You want to make sure every component will fit. You also want a mid-tower because in the future you may want to add a lot of more cooling options or more fans or more drives, whatever. So this is important. Now that's the other thing as well. This case for me, the Factory Design R5 has got a lot of drive options, which is also removable. The cages, is it called cages? Yeah, the drive cages are removable to give access to much bigger graphics cards or even water cooling options or radiators should I choose so. Right, just a few seconds, some water. So how are you guys doing? So far so good. No one wants to say hi? Feel free to give me some super chat. We need the dosh. We can put back in the channel. Guys, I've done over 210 something videos 4.5 years. I'm not going anywhere. You guys know I've been providing you value. So if you want to tip me, feel free. No problem. All right, let's carry on. If I forget anything, if I've missed out any information that you want to know, please let us know and I'll try to answer that. Okay. Now let's move to the second bit, which is where do you start? Let's go with the processor. Okay. Where's the processor CPU? Right. For the processor, we chose the AMD Ryzen 7-2700X. Now, first of all, if you haven't watched my previous video on AMD versus Intel, up there or in the description below, go watch it. Why we went with AMD, I've explained that for content creation, for me, for video editing, there is no doubt that AMD, since the first generation of Ryzen came a couple of years ago, has been crushing Intel's as competitor. There is absolutely no doubt. When it comes to gaming, there is something to be said for single core performance. Intel is still superior to a degree in single core performance, faster and probably a bit cooler. Actually, it is a bit cooler, no doubt. However, the price difference, there is no doubt in anyone's mind, even Intel fanboys, that AMD is better for content creation, especially for applications which use multi-core processors. Okay, absolutely. In terms of gaming, a lot of fanboys will still say, and I probably will agree, that Intel is still superior, but it does come at a cost. So we went with AMD. Now, you guys know I'm coming from an old AMD FX platform, right? 4 years I did not upgrade my PC. So for me, any Ryzen generation would have been an upgrade. The first generation I did not upgrade. Now, we did have a vote. And you guys suggested I probably should get a Ryzen 3000 series, the latest, on Amazon Prime Day. The reason we didn't was because there was no offer for 3000 series, which usually is what the case is. With a new architecture release, there will always be offers on the previous generation and from the competitors, but not the actual new tech. So that made sense. So there was none, so I did not want to risk it, because obviously any new architecture, any new release will have some issues which needs to be fixed and patched, and so that's why we went with the 7-2700X. Now initially I did choose the Ryzen 5 2600, not the X version, because that is also a very good all-rounder, but I was going to buy this from UK. However, I had some Amazon affiliate vouchers from US, and there was an offer on the Ryzen 7-2700X which cost $200. So I did not want to miss out on this opportunity. I got it. And voila. Now, the thing with the Ryzen 7-2700X, it does come with a Wraith Prism with RGB LED cooler, which is really good for what it's worth. We will be able to do some overclocking. It was not going to be to the max, but it's good enough, and so I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I've already done the installation. For anyone who's just joining us, I've already done the initial assembly outside the PC case. We've done a post, so go watch it up there. Okay. So that's in terms of the CPU. I don't think I'm missing out on anything. Nope. Obviously, you know, it's an 8 core 16 threaded processor, and it can be pushed further for overclocking. We're not going to do overclocking in time soon. And the thing to note is, in terms of system memory, the RAM, it will support 293 megahertz of DDR4 memory. Okay, so that will come in handy when we discuss about the RAM later. Okay, so that's in terms of CPU. Moving along, next stop, I think we should talk about the motherboard. We went with the MSI B450 Tomahawk ATX M4 motherboard, and this is a very popular board. This is the B450 version. Now, first thing, why ATX in terms of the size? If you don't need, or you're not thinking about going with a dual graphics card configuration, you know, SLI or Crossfire. I think it's Crossfire, isn't it, for AMD? Then there is no need really to get an ATX motherboard. You could get a micro ATX motherboard. Remember, still in a mid-tower ATX case, but you can get away with it because the only main difference will be there will be extra PCI slots for the ATX motherboard. However, in my case, now unfortunately the MSI's website specification part of it doesn't seem to be working today. I do not know why, so we're gonna have to stick with the overview aspect of it. Now, unfortunately, fortunately for me, I want to use this board to its max. I want to put eventually fill every PCI Express slot and PCI slot, and I want to use every SATA port on there, and I want to plug in as much as possible all the front panel connectors, the back ports, everything. So this is one of the reasons why I went with an ATX size motherboard and not a micro ATX, although that would have been cheaper. So if you want to save some money, this is where you can do that. Okay. The other reason as well, for with an ATX, typically you will get usually 4 RAM slots, which is great for upgrading your RAM later. However, some micro ATX motherboards will also have 4 RAM slots, so you just have to check that out. Now, in terms of I/O ports, one of the reasons I went with this as opposed to others is this little USB Type-C port. I think 3.1 gen, yeah. I needed at least one USB Type-C to, you know, to keep up with the current trend. My case does not have front USB Type-C ports. Not a problem. We can get a card for that for later, or a front, what do you call them, connector. It's not an issue. Apart from that, the board has got video ports. It's got a display port, DVI port, and I don't know if it's got the HDMI. I forgot to check. But this will only work if you have a processor, which is an APU, accelerated processing unit. Otherwise, this will need a graphics card, a discrete graphics card, to get powered. Okay. Now, in terms of a big issue at the moment for compatibility with Ryzen 3000 series, from what I understand, the B450 motherboard may not necessarily be compatible for the latest Ryzen 3000 series. Even with a BIOS flash update, it has to be specified on the board, on the cover, on the box, which is a bit difficult to know if you're trying to buy online. You may not see the box. This is one of the negatives about, obviously, new release, a new tech, new architecture. Compatibility, especially backwards compatibility, in theory is okay, but in practice a lot of people are having problem with this. So you may want to consider a B570, is it 570, B540 motherboard. Don't quote me on this. I mean the latest one. I'm getting muddled with the denominations here. But you may want to make sure, if you're buying a Ryzen 3000 series, that your motherboard is actually compatible. Write to the manufacturer, check out reviews. Do not assume that you will be able to put a Ryzen 3000 chip on a B450 motherboard. Okay, it may not work. Just bear that in mind. Now, what else have I forgotten about this board? In terms of why did I go with MSI as opposed to other makes and model? To be honest, I do like Asus. I do like ASRock, Gigabyte. They're all good, you know. But if I'm not mistaken, there is something to be said about MSI. They probably are slightly better for performance, stability, and duration, but I've used all of them. I mean, it's not a problem. Go with whatever your budget suggests you, but do not go for a non-branded, unknown, cheap knockoff board. You will have problems. And okay, the other thing I forgot to mention, which again I did a video on buying used versus new parts for this PC. So the case we said you can get used, no problem. The the processor potentially you can get used, okay, unless you got bent pins, but it's okay to get processor used. The motherboard is something I would not suggest you get used. You should get a motherboard brand new. It comes with its warranty, and you're, you know, a lot safer this way. Now in terms of the why the B 450 and not the X, what is it, the X 470, I think. The X version, if I'm not mistaken, unless you're thinking about, you know, massive overclocking and crossfire and all this good stuff, it's not necessary. If you're planning to use one graphics card, some overclocking, the B450, you will save a bit of money. There is no need to go any bigger. So that's and I think it's also something to be said for the processor type. So the Ryzen 7 still okay. If you go any above than this, maybe you might want to consider the X570, for example. Okay, right. Now, the other thing in terms of the compatibility with the RAM, we talked about this with the CPU. Where is it? This is not making sense. Unfortunately, we haven't got specs. Let's go back to overview. Now, here it says it supports up to 3466 megahertz of DDR4 RAM, but this is only if you're overclocking, okay? So just bear that in mind, okay? So you may want to check, because if you get a board which is cheaper and then you're getting a processor and RAM which can exceed the speed at which your motherboard can tolerate, then you'd be bottlenecking your system because of the motherboard. So checking how much or what speed of RAM your motherboard can sustain is a good idea before you consider buy the board, if you want to maximize every part's potential. How are we doing with time, guys? It's 22 minutes. Wow. Okay, let's make this quick, okay, because I know it's late. Okay, moving on. We are doing next cooler. We mentioned the cooler, and if I was to get a better cooler, I would probably go with a traditional air cooler, you know, the Cooler Master 212 Evo. You can't beat that, but cooler is something very personal. Go with whatever you feel, okay? Right, RAM, we went with the Patriot Viper for 16 gigabyte. Now, I probably will upgrade the 16 gigabyte. In terms of color scheme, I did make a mistake. I thought I would have red, but I don't. Not a major issue. At the moment, 1080p video editing is where I'm at, so this should be fine, because currently I'm using 16 gigabyte DDR3 memory. So going from that, which is I think 1866 megahertz speed, going from that to 16 gigabyte DDR4 memory, 3200 megahertz, is a massive upgrade in of itself, and I'm still going to be only editing and rendering in 1080p. Plus on top of that, we have a much better processor, so this should be fine. But if I probably will upgrade this to 32 gigabyte down the line with probably different color, maybe more neutral, or RGB if we're gonna have RGB parts. Now, when it comes to RAM, speed is a lot more important than cache latency. Don't get too bogged down with the cache latency, okay? The CL numbers. For gaming, for content creation, it doesn't make a lot of difference. Go with the speed and the size. And if you want to choose color scheme, again, RAM, don't go for cheap non-branded one. I mean, Viper is decent enough. Go with any branded ones that you can afford. Dual channel definitely has a lot more advantage in some gaming applications and other types of applications. So I would definitely suggest dual channel. If you can't afford, get a single stick of the highest possible RAM you can at the time, with an intention to upgrade or to add another one for dual channel. It is much more efficient that way. You're not going to bottleneck your whole system. Before I forget, there is one major aspect of all these parts. There is one backbone reason why we chose these specific parts, especially the processor. I would say to a certain extent the motherboard, and also the graphics card for later. And do remember, the main reason for my series, for this series, the challenge is for content creation, specifically to be compatible with DaVinci Resolve, which is cross-platform compatible. And if I'm not mistaken, I can try to retrieve the file. Maybe you can read up on it. The parts that we've listed is known to be compatible with Ryzen. Not only that, with also the Linux platform. So Windows, obviously, it will be compatible, but it's also compatible with Linux and all the drivers. And also, people have reported to successfully build a Hackintosh using these parts. So that was also a backbone reason why I chose these specific parts. Okay, right, moving on. What did we do? Okay, next I think we should talk about the graphics card. Okay, so the graphics card we went with was the Sapphire Radeon RX 580 8GB Nitro, coming from an R9 380 currently, which I have 4GB. This is a massive improvement. Again, my computer isn't mainly for gaming. Secondary, we're going to do some gaming stuff, but it is mainly for content creation, 1080p. And this card is going to be an overkill for the 1080p. Also, this card will be used with DaVinci Resolve for some graphics processing. Okay, DaVinci Resolve does do that with certain cards, and this is one of them. So that should help. Now, I think you guys probably will you're going to call me out on this. I do believe this is not the best card to have for the system. I should get a more powerful card at the moment, because I'm only doing 1080p rendering and I'm not gaming on anything big. And my monitors are 1080p crappy monitors from BenQ, 22-inch or 21.5-inch. So this is good enough, more than good enough for my current system. I will be upgrading my monitors hopefully eventually, and I will upgrade this graphics card, because yes, it is going to be slightly underused or slightly bottlenecking the processor, definitely. So we'll do that later, but for now it's fine. And then obviously we could use this graphics card in a different build, because you guys have asked me for a bit more budget build. Okay, no one is saying hello. Come on, man. Somebody say hello. Alright. So, moving on. We've done the graphics card. What we got? Right, in terms of, let's do the storage. Now, guys, speed, you're talking SSD minimum. One SSD for your operating system. Thankfully for me, what I'm going to do, I've got 3 Sandisk 240GB drives. We're going to put Windows, Linux, and MacOS on each of them for better comparison. Yeah. Now, I also got from Amazon Prime, we bought for the first time, I got an NVMe M.2 SSD, which is supposed to be even better. Obviously for speed, here it is, from Crucial, 1TB. Initially, I had the intention to decide on one operating system when we do the comparison and then stick with that. Then I thought, I'm not going to do this. Instead, I'm going to leave the 3 operating system on the 3 different SSD from Sandisk, and I'm going to use the Crucial for my main task, which is going to be video editing. All my files, all the applications for video editing are going to go on the Crucial 1TB. Massive improvement in performance, so this will make all my tasks a lot faster. Plus, obviously, there will be more than enough space, 1TB. We can do some gaming tests as well. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, which also, yeah, so in terms of make model, I mean, as far as this NVMe, then you're good to go, get whatever is on offer at the time. Do bear in mind though, not every M.2 or that fits on a PCI, the mini PCI slot is going to be NVMe. Just be very wary of this. There are some normal SSD which will fit on your mini slot for the PCI, which is not going to be NVMe, and it's not going to be faster than a normal SSD. When you are going to be buying, make sure you understand the difference, and make sure if you want the absolute fastest performance, you have to go with NVMe, and just check for the read speed and the write speed and all that good stuff. Okay, right. In terms of now the various storage drives, I will be using a couple of 2 TB storage drives for main storage. And where did they go? Again here, at this point, as long as you got SSD, you could go a bit cheaper with 5,400 RPM, although the ones I've got are 7,200 RPM, because most of my activities will be on the SSD, so it won't make much difference in accessing the files from the other drives. Now, saying that, there is also one drive currently which I'm using, which is a 4 TB, and that is 5,400 RPM, because this is my backup drive. And for the backup drive, you don't need anything too fancy. Again, you can go for a bit cheaper. Now, in terms of color, there's a red drive, there's a blue drive, there's a black drive, there's a green drive. There are differences between them lot, but unless you're doing a server, a server build, or you are recording footage from a CCTV, or maybe you need extra security in terms of enterprise level transfer files, and for longer endurance and keeping your files better, there are some differences between the different colors. And but for normal operation, as long as you've got an SSD for your boot drive, it will not make a difference. I would say go with the cheapest that you can get for the most storage that you can get. Okay, and that's that. And not last, we got one more thing. You guys know I talked about having a DVD drive. I know it's OG at this stage, but a person like me, technical repair, we sometimes have to have access to a DVD drive to either record stuff, or to even test stuff, or even to install some old operating system, or even test some old gaming. It is handy. I had some from before when it was still a thing, so I just left one in there. Each of my system, I've got one. I would say to you, it is handy to have. If you can get one without breaking the bank, if you have the space, you've got the connection, the SATA and the power supply codes, it won't hurt you. But obviously, if you're tight on budget, it is something that is not needed at this stage. Okay, you don't have to have it. And which leads us to the last bit, and that's going to be the Corsair CXM750 watt power supply. Now, the power supply, guys, do not advise you to get a used one. Certified refurbished from a good seller or the manufacturer is fine, but don't get a used one. Do not get a non-branded one. Don't get a cheap knockoff one. Get a decent branded one. We've had a couple of videos on the channel whereby I benefited from the fact that we went with a brand, Corsair, not being we're not favoring Corsair over the above. It just happened that's what I had, because when I contacted them twice for 2 different power supply, they did come through. It was still under warranty. One was like close to 3 years, maybe both, and they replaced me with a brand new one, the same one obviously. And you can watch that video up there for when my PC was crashing. Okay, so couple of things you need to know about the power supply. First thing is more important is the wattage. Now, what I would suggest is PC part picker is a good place to start anyway, because it will give you your wattage. For example, if I can show you here, when you go down the list, it'll give you a wattage. Let me go back to, there you go. When you list down everything that you're going to use it for, it gives you an estimated wattage, where is it, of 469 watt. All right, and it kind of gives you also a breakdown of each component. Now this is an estimate, it's a decent estimate. The power supply you don't want to skim on, but you also don't want to get a 2000 watt power supply when you only need about a 500. Okay, that's kind of overkill. Now, general rule of thumb, I would say, if PC Part Picker gives you like here 469, let's make it around 500, don't get a 500 watt power supply. The reason is because, one, you may consider overclocking in the near future, which means you're going to push extra voltage, you're going to need a lot more juice. Secondly, you may be upgrading components or adding components. Okay, and if your power supply hasn't got enough, then you got a problem. Your machine will not run stable. So I would say, rule of thumb for me, I would say take that figure, which is 500 watt, and multiply it, but at least 1.2 times to 1.5 times. So I would say, you know, 650, 750, you know, is decent enough. Now it just so happens that our power supply for the CXM 750 watt was what was given by Corsair. This is what I had from before, and it will be fine. It will give me a lot of leeway to upgrade or to test overclocking, so which is fine. Now the other thing you can do is use a watts calculator, and we can do something like this one, which is Vision. There's plenty others. I think probably each brand has got their own. Corsair probably has their own, EVJ has their own. Check. All you need to do is go and input, you know, your various configuration, and it will give you an estimated watts calculation that you need. Do never ever go below that. Always go above. Even if it's a bit more money, trust me, you'll thank me later. Okay. Now, in terms of whether should you go for modular, non-modular, semi-modular, this again, it will depend on your case. It will depend on the budget you've allocated for it. It is absolutely fine to use a non-modular traditional one if you can, you know, cable manage the whole thing. In terms of modular, they cost more expensive obviously, but it will give you better management of cables, because some cables you won't have to plug in. My favorite probably is going to be a bit in between, which is what we've done, the Corsair CXM, which was a semi-modular, which means a couple of cables are already there, but the others are optional. But again, I think I bought this because of price. It was what the budget, the best price at the time that I bought this, so I wouldn't look back. I wouldn't worry about it too much as long as it's branded, okay, and it's got good warranty policy, and you bought it from a good seller. Do not buy used on this one. All right, which by the way reminds me, the graphics card is okay to get used. The RAM is also okay to get used. Storage, do not get used. Again, we've talked about it. Go watch the video below. And I think that's it, guys. I don't know if I've left anything out. Now you can tell me if there's anything else that I've left out that we need to cover. I don't think we do. I really can't think of any. Now what is missing from here is obviously operating system. We've talked about it. Try to get the cheapest possible. Don't pirate. I do not condone piracy. There is no need for it. In terms of monitor, this is something which I haven't properly researched because there are so many options. This is something which, again, if you're going to build a system like that, you don't want to use crappy, you know, generic 1080p monitors. It's okay to start with, but I do have the intention to upgrade my monitors down the line, because I will be doing a lot of content creation in the future. We probably will do 2K or 4K footage, so we will need a decent monitor. That's a video in and of itself, which we'll tackle down the line. Okay, now this whole system right now, over $1,000. If I was to buy it today, with the monitor, with some of the other peripherals, I would say this, if it's one monitor setup, give or take £1,500. Guys, it's a bit pricey. Okay, I wouldn't advise you as a first time builder, unless you've got the dosh and you're a bit risky, but it's a bit overkill for a first time builder. There's 4 budget friendly builds that we can do. In fact, some people have requested for some budget builds, which we will try our best to do on this channel, but you can suggest to me what you want to see exactly. I'm going to come off the screen and webcam. Let's go to full screen. Can you see me on full screen? No, you can't. Okay, webcam, that's the one. There we go, back to me. Okay, I will take your questions. It's been now 39 minutes, close to 40. If you haven't got questions, we are going to end this very soon. Now, I do want to remind you, this is the One PC to rule them all challenge. So for part 15 and 16, I will be doing Windows installation for the Windows, basically how to create a Windows USB installation flash drive, and how to create a Linux installation flash drive. If I can get my hands on a Mac, I will also do how to do the Windows on a Mac, basically how to create the Windows USB drive on a Mac. But I haven't got a Mac with me at the moment, but that's not urgent. Now, the other option was to test some of the system outside the PC case, and or just get cracking on with the PC build, as in put all the assembled PC parts into the case itself. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, let's check what you guys voted for. The second one was 30%. You guys just want to see the assembly of the PC into the case. All right, I'm good with that. I may still do the video about testing the whole system outside, but I probably won't upload it. We'll keep that for another time. Okay, so a couple of things before we go. If you have no questions, I'm going to be offing in probably less than 4 minutes, 5 minutes. For one, I am still trying to do daily uploads. This is a personal experiment I'm trying to do for the channel. You guys know the reasons why. This should be 90% should be about the continuation of this series, which is the One PC to Rule Them All series. However, because sometimes things go wrong, life and all, I may not be able to do the next part of the series. However, I will still want to upload a video daily, at least for the month of August 2019, and we'll review this next month. But for this month, I will try my best to upload a video. I will try my best not to upload a crappy video. It will be with some thought, but you can imagine, you can appreciate that daily uploads, there is a slight, I would say slight, decrease in the quality, but I don't think it's any worse than my previous videos. Just that goes to show I've got the same standard. Whether I spend a week or a day, it's the same. So maybe a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not sure. So guys, tell me, are you enjoying this kind of series? By that I mean, for the first time, I think on YouTube, there's not a lot of people that do a very structured, organized, continuous series. I don't think there's a lot. When you want to look for information on YouTube, it's scattered all over the place. It's very disorganized, very disorientated. So that's not always a good thing. So if you're enjoying this, should we continue? I think I want to continue, but I do want to give you this heads up. Hopefully, maybe next month, I may consider moving to Patreon, as in adding Patreon, because we need to, up our game in terms of more modern tech and a lot more tech to test. And YouTube isn't paying me enough to be able to do this, so we have to see if we can get your support. You guys know I've provided so much value for repairing, for teaching you stuff, been here, and if my channel is not evidence, then I can't convince you, and it's not going to be forced on anyone. But I am considering it. I've never done it before, and it will really help the channel. Plus, there are a lot of gadgets, I would say a lot of computers and laptops I want to repair and give away for free. And if we do have a bit of funding and support, it will be a lot easier for me to find the parts, get them up and running, and give them to whoever deserves it, or just as a giveaway. Obviously, right now, I can't afford the modern tech, but if the Patreon things work out, or if you guys support me, maybe we can do a lot more recent tech. Okay? So we're going to reach almost 45 minutes. That's way too much. You don't deserve to watch my face and listen to my voice for that long. I feel sorry for you, but unfortunately, it's got to be done. And I'm going to take my leave soon. So thank you so much for joining. Once again, if you're new here, my name was Ash from HealMyTech, and we do reviews, repairs, and tutorials of tech. So consider subscribing, enable the bell notification icon. Also, there will be Amazon links usually in the description below. Please consider using them. It won't cost you anything extra and it will help the channel with a small kickback. And do not try to send me messages on social media platforms. I'm not very active. The accounts exist. Best way to reach me is here on YouTube. And also, please be very descriptive when you're trying to ask for help. It's very difficult to answer some of the questions sometimes. I hope you appreciate this. So if there's nothing else, thank you so much for watching. No one has written anything in the chats today. Not a problem. I hope you've enjoyed and benefited from it. Feel free to share this with people who you think might benefit from it. And check out this video up here or this series down here for more videos on my channel. Do not forget to check other stuff. You will learn something, I promise you. Okay, until next time, peace out.